This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
قال بيان لكتائب الشهيد عز الدين القسام الجناح العسكري.
A statement by the Izz al-Din Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, said that 2 of its members were martyred in early morning clashes with the Israeli occupation forces near al-Maghazi in Gaza. Al Jazeera received a copy of the statement, which also said that an Israeli soldier was wounded in the clashes.
الدماء سالت هنا وسط غزة، لكنها ليست بدماء الأضاحي.
Blood has been spilled in the middle of Gaza, but it is not the blood of the animal sacrifice for the Eid. It is human blood. Israel struck this area after heavy clashes with members from the Al-Quds brigades, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad movement. The clashes erupted in the early morning. Israel infiltrated central Gaza in what the Israeli military described as a routine operation. But what Israel considered routine has left behind sufficient destruction to ruin the joy of Eid for this young girl, terrified by the aircraft swarming the sky over Gaza. According to medical sources, the helicopters fired at ambulance cars, hindering them from reaching the injured. This is a normal Eid in Gaza, which is like any other day in this area that has not known peace or calmness for many past Eids.
بل هو يوم ككل الأيام في قطاع لم يعرف الهدوء والسكينة منذ أعياد.
After
the Israeli incursion east of the Bridge camp in Gaza, Palestinian resistance fired locally manufactured rockets at the town of Sederot near Gaza. Israel did not announce any injuries as a result of this Palestinian strike. With us from Gaza is our correspondent Wa'el al-Dahdouh. Wa'el, what are the details of these clashes in Gaza and what is the current condition?
أولا العملية ما زالت مستمرة وإن كانت محدودة شرق مخيم المغازي وسط قطاع غزة.
The operation is ongoing. It's limited to the eastern part of the Maghazi camp in central Gaza. The tanks are taking positions on the streets, advancing and withdrawing, intermittently firing waves of bullets and rockets. There are many helicopters and drones also firing as they hover over the camp and over other parts of Gaza. So far, 3 people have been martyred according to Palestinian medical sources. 2 of them are from the Qassam brigades and the 3rd from the Al-Quds brigades of the Islamic Jihad movement. 7 people have been injured. At least 1 of them is in critical condition, according to medical sources. One of the injured is a camera person working for the British Reuters news agency.
إذن هذه العملية حسب الجيش الإسرائيلي هي عملية محدودة وروتينية وتبحث كما يقول الجيش الإسرائيلي عن عدد من الأهداف سواء.
Israeli soldiers fired at a group of news reporters who were simply doing their job in covering the Israeli incursion. According to the Israeli army, this is a limited and routine operation. They are looking for a number of targets, including tunnels or explosive devices planted by Palestinian resistance fighters. This operation is part of an Israeli political decision, which suggests that this operation might continue longer. The Israeli forces called this operation the Targets Bank. Based on what's happened thus far, it seems that the Targets Bank operation contains a long list of Palestinian figures that might be targeted by the Israeli occupation aircraft. Neither the Israeli army leaders nor the politicians have tried to keep this matter a secret.
شكرا لك وائل الدحدوح مراسل الجزيرة في غزة.
Lead story this evening, a Qassam rocket hit the courtyard of an elementary school in Sederot this morning. Several children had to be treated for shock. The building at the school was slightly damaged, and in Gaza, 4 more terrorists were killed during an IDF raid described by an Army spokesman as, quote, a routine counterterrorism operation. IBA's Eli Wagalanter has more details.
A Qassam rocket fired by Palestinians into Israel this morning landed 50 meters from the Gil Elementary School in Sderot. No one was wounded in the attack, but 12 children were treated for shock. We heard the code red alert, and then there was a loud boom, said Ofer Vaknin, a 6th grader at the school. We figured a rocket landed close by. A lot of the kids were frightened. Many parents arrived at the school soon after and took their children home. It was the 6th rocket attack today on the western Negev, the previous 5 landing in open areas, causing no casualties or damage. Meanwhile, inside Gaza, 4 terrorists were killed in separate incidents when troops from the Golani Brigade, backed by tanks and the Engineer Corps, raided the central strip. The army confirmed that Golani Brigade soldiers operating in central Gaza opened fire on 2 Islamic Jihad operatives who were approaching the security fence carrying grenades and other weapons. Another Islamic Jihad terrorist and a member of the Popular Resistance Committees were also killed in a separate incident. The operation came 2 days after a wave of Israeli air raids in Gaza left 12 terrorists dead, including the head of Islamic Jihad's armed wing. Vice Premier Chaim Ramon said today that Israel's strategy of blockading Gaza and battling terrorists is working. Israel's recent policy toward Palestinian terror is bearing fruit, Ramon told Army Radio. If Palestinians stop firing rockets into Israel, Israel would have no reason to attack. In related news, IDF troops arrested 13 Palestinian fugitives during a routine operation in the West Bank overnight. Eli Wagalanter, IBA News.
Today, the Palestinians celebrated the Eid al-Adha holiday, despite the daily Israeli violations of their rights and despite the ongoing blockade imposed on the residents of the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the Israeli Minister of Transportation, Shaul Mufaz, called on his government to engage in indirect negotiations with Hamas in order to reach a truce with the Islamic movement. This news comes amidst reports that Israel is studying a plan to build a new settlement outpost in occupied East Jerusalem.
With the arrival of the Eid al-Adha holiday in the Palestinian territories, Israel continues to implement its bloody policy, which includes the killing and mutilation of the civilians. Today, the Palestinians held a series of funeral processions for their fallen martyrs, who were killed in yet a new wave of Israeli raids in the Gaza Strip. During the past few months, the Israeli occupation forces carried out dozens of raids and attacks in the Gaza Strip, martyring hundreds of Palestinians. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister said proudly that his army will intensify its military assault on the Gaza Strip in the upcoming days.
Our battle is long and harsh. The occupation is controlling our land, our Jerusalem, and our Al-Aqsa Mosque. It continues to Judify Jerusalem, build the apartheid wall, deny our freedom, and deprive our dignity. My dear Palestinian brothers, our message to the Palestinian people is a message of unity, reconciliation, and consensus.
On the economic front, many Palestinians were unable to meet the financial obligation of the Eid holiday due to the Israeli blockades.
Prices are very high. For example, the price of a cow is 20 to 30% higher this year than last year, and this goes for everything else. This is due to the Israeli blockade on the Gaza Strip.
Amidst the ongoing Israeli raids and assassination campaign, the Israeli Minister of Transportation, Shaul Mufaz, called on his government to open a dialogue with Hamas. According to media reports, Mufaz's initiative came after Hamas said that it was willing to hold cross-border rocket attacks, provided that both sides reach a ceasefire agreement.
A reporter from Israeli television Channel 2 called the Palestinian Prime Minister Hania. Hania's son answered the call and passed the phone to the Prime Minister. During the conversation, the reporter wished the Prime Minister a happy Eid. Then he asked him about the cooling-off period. The Prime Minister said in order for a ceasefire to hold, Israel must stop its aggression against the Palestinian people.
Meanwhile, Israel's deputy prime minister said that Hamas's position indicates that the movement is weak and afraid of intensifying Israeli attacks. Despite their suffering, the Palestinians have not lost the hope of living free from the occupation, which is trying to take away their rights and obliterate their identities. From occupied Jerusalem, Wajih Houeni, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Television. Happy Eid.
In London, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas confirmed that the Palestinian people and their leadership are determined to reach a peace agreement with Israel by the year 2008. In a joint press conference with the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, Abbas stressed the importance of immediately starting the peace talks and said that the Israeli settlement campaign is hampering the peace efforts. The Palestinian president condemned the Israeli attack on the Gaza Strip, where dozens of Palestinian martyrs have fallen. By the same token, Abbas condemned the cross-border rocket attacks on Israeli settlements. Britain's Prime Minister Gordon Brown said that the United States and Britain will sponsor the upcoming Donors Conference scheduled next March or April. The Donors Conference, which is expected to take place in the West Bank city of Bethlehem, aims at boosting the Palestinian economy. Furthermore, Brown confirmed that he has made contact with several European officials regarding the creation of industrial zones, the reconstruction of Palestinian infrastructure, and the launch of economic programs, which include small loans and projects.
The presidential election deadlock in Lebanon has not yet been resolved, despite continued diplomatic visits. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, David Welch, will leave Lebanon today after holding negotiations with Parliamentary Speaker Nabi Berri and leaders from the ruling majority in an attempt to resolve the presidential election deadlock, which has been postponed 9 times. Welch reiterated his administration's support for the ruling majority and stressed the importance of holding the presidential elections on time. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid Muallim accused the U.S. of blocking Syrian and French efforts to end the presidential deadlock in Lebanon and expressed regret over the failure of the French mediators in Lebanon to distance themselves from the American stand. Joining us from Beirut is our correspondent, Elian Shatri. Elian, how is the situation in Lebanon as the presidential vote in parliament is about to take place for the 10th time?
Yes, Amal. First of all, I would like to say that U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, David Welch, left for the U.S. 3 hours ago. Before leaving, Welch held a meeting with the leader of the ruling majority, Saad al-Hariri, and the president of the Lebanese Socialist Progressive Party, Walid Junblat. Welch did not make any comments about the meeting before leaving for the U.S. this morning. Welch's achievement is ambiguous. There are many questions about what will happen on Saturday, December 22nd, when the presidential vote in Parliament will be held for the 10th time, as it was postponed 9 times. Welch said that he did not meet with the Free Patriotic Movement leader, Michel Aoun, who was officially selected by the Lebanese opposition to speak on their behalf in the ongoing negotiations over the presidential elections. Welch left behind a situation of great ambiguity, because it's still unclear what will happen during the 9th parliamentary session on Saturday, December 22nd.
Some believe that the objective behind Welch's visit was to derail the French initiative, which was intended to provide the necessary political conditions so the presidential elections can be held on time. Did the Syrian Foreign Minister, Walid Muallim, point to this in his statement?
The Foreign Minister, Bernard Kouchner, has returned to Beirut for the 7th time. The failure of the consecutive French initiatives has made the American intervention necessary. President Sarkozy gave the Syrians an ultimatum and a deadline until Saturday to use their influence in Lebanon to bring about the presidential elections. However, it seems that the international intervention has made it difficult to reach a clear result in Lebanon. Thus, as long as the international and regional tug-of-war continues to influence Lebanon, there will be an ambiguous state of affairs. The French and the American positions are not harmonious, and they are contradictory to the Syrian position. This makes it impossible to know what will happen on Saturday, especially after Parliamentary Speaker Nabi Berri said that elections might be postponed for the 10th time if things do not change.
Elian, some believe that the surprise return of Welch to Lebanon was a message to Syria and Iran that Washington will not let them use Lebanon as a playing field. How does the Lebanese opposition view this visit?
The fact that Welch was accompanied by Deputy National Security Advisor Elliot Abrams, who is known for his extremist views, supports this theory. This visit was viewed as a clear sign of American support for the March 14th coalition that specifically accuses Iran and Syria of derailing efforts aimed at holding the presidential elections on time. Thus, there is clear support for the March 14th coalition from Washington and the international community, and there are talks that an international resolution might be passed pertaining to this issue.
During this year's Hajj, Saudi authorities attempted to limit the phenomena of some pilgrims sleeping on the streets, especially around the Jamarat bridge. This was to avoid problems, particularly with regards to security. Details with Sultan al-Dosari.
Many pilgrims choose to sleep on the ground and on the streets during the Hajj. Some of them justify it by saying that the cost of the Hajj is unattainable. Many of them also say that they sneaked into the land of the heightened emotions, either on their own or within groups.
We are part of the Muslim community, but we are poor and want to fulfill the Hajj. But the Hajj costs 4,000 to 5,000, and we can't afford it.
I know many young people who want to do the Hajj, but they couldn't get the permit to come. And anyway, for them, the permits are very expensive, so they camped out on the ground.
For many years, the Saudi government sought solutions for the problem of pilgrims sleeping on the streets. They did not want to compromise the humanity of the people or push them out of the land of heightened emotions.
People sleeping on the streets and people walking on streets designated for cars create chaos and confusion. We hope that in the coming years, the streets and the roads of Mina will become better equipped to handle the number of pilgrims, God willing.
The negative effects of sleeping on the streets are many, including traffic disorder and chaos, deteriorating health conditions, the obstruction of ambulance cars, the infringement on the property and space of others, and the spread of contagious diseases.
Improvement is needed with regard to bathroom facilities and transportation. It's so crowded now that one stands in line for 2 hours to get into the bathroom. This is difficult, especially for families with little children.
The Saudi authorities have had great success in limiting people from sleeping on the streets in the area around the Jamarat bridge, which has helped prevent many problems. But the street sleepers simply relocated to the streets and pavements of Mina, in parking lots and even around bathrooms. According to the people here, there is no Hajj without sleeping on the streets. But the Saudi government wants this Islamic gathering to appear more elegant, so they make yearly plans to stop street sleepers, but without success. From the land of the blessed emotions, this is Sultan al-Dosari, Al-Iraqiya.
Sultan al-Dosari, Al-Iraqiya.
A mass wedding ceremony was held today in the holy city of Karbala, where dozens of newlywed couples received gifts from the Iraqi Prime Minister.
The participants described the Prime Minister's gesture as an incentive for married couples to start a family, which is the societal nucleus for the next generation.
These young couples had a dream that one day they would enter the golden cage or nest of marriage, where they can raise a family that will help build a society based on solid foundations. Today, the dream has become a reality thanks to the Iraqi Prime Minister, who pledged financial support for more than 60 newlywed couples. Ululating mothers and newlywed couples expressed happiness and gratitude towards the Prime Minister's gesture.
I would like to thank His Excellency the Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki for making this possible. Today, many young couples who couldn't otherwise afford to get married tied the knot. The office of the Prime Minister helped pay for the wedding expenses of dozens of newlywed couples in the cities of Najaf and Karbala. The couples also received financial support to help them pay for other related marriage expenses, including the buying of furniture, heating and cooling systems, and others. In addition to this, the couples received a small amount of money.
The newlywed couples expressed happiness and gratitude toward the noble gesture by His Excellency the Iraqi Prime Minister, who donated valuable gifts that helped to alleviate some of their financial hardships.
Special thanks go to Mr. Nouri al-Maliki for this sweet gesture.
This was a great gesture, which helped many young couples meet their financial obligations.
We thank Mr. Nouri al-Maliki for this beautiful gesture.
Frankly, I can't describe my feelings. This was an excellent gesture by His Excellency, the Iraqi Prime Minister. This will encourage more couples to get married, God willing.
Al-Maliki brought happiness to these young couples and their mothers. Without his help, many of the couples couldn't afford to get married.
On this great day, we thank Mr. Nouri al-Maliki for the joy he brought to our hearts and the hearts of our loved ones.
The clouds of terrorism have disappeared amidst the joy, happiness, and the ululating of Iraqi mothers whose dreams have become a reality. The Iraqi government has taken practical measures aimed at promoting the marital practices among young couples. In a noble gesture that reflected positively among the society, al-Maliki's government pledged financial and symbolic support to dozens of newlywed couples.
The United Nations Security Council is calling on the Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon to keep planning for a UN force to be deployed to Somalia. It's also called for more money to be pumped into the African Union peacekeeping mission in Somalia. UN officials say 600,000 people, that's half the population of the capital of Somalia, Mogadishu, have fled fighting since the transitional government ousted the Union of Islamic Courts nearly a year ago. The government has been pressing the United Nations to send in peacekeepers to support an AU force that was supposed to number 8,000 troops. But since the mission was approved in January, only around 1,600 Ugandan soldiers have actually arrived. Well, that fierce fighting in Somalia's capital has forced hundreds of thousands from their homes. Most have nowhere to go. All this week, Al Jazeera is reporting from Somalia, a nation in ruins. Our correspondent Andrew Simmons travelled to Dusa Mareb, north of Mogadishu, where people have found some security, but there are severe shortages of food, water and shelter.
No one can console this woman. She says her husband and a son were killed in Mogadishu. Having returned to this town where she originally lived, she says she found her home had been taken over by settlers. Now, as a widow, she has no possessions and shares this small rundown compound with other people who fled from the capital, all of them confined to this space. This mother shows me how hard it is to get by in Somalia when you become an internally displaced person. That's the official term. What it means is a homeless, destitute person sharing the same misery as many others. How do you all manage to cope in this tiny space?
Sometimes we get something to eat, sometimes we don't. The place where we live is crowded, but we have no choice.
7 families share their lives here. The owner of the compound, an elderly lady, didn't hesitate to offer them shelter. Dusa Mareb is a forlorn place. In Somalia today, hundreds of thousands of people are spread all over the countryside, getting shelter where they can find it. This doesn't look like a Darfur crisis with numerous semi-permanent camps, because many of the displaced find temporary homes with friends, relatives, and anyone prepared to help them by letting them in. But that doesn't mean the need for outside help isn't great, and many people simply can't find anywhere to stay. Now, under every tree in this town, there are people seeking shade, seeking shelter. They have absolutely nothing. The numbers are in their thousands. No one's sure of the exact figure. This isn't a new phenomenon in Somalia today, but it's getting worse all the time. Over here, 3 families living in one makeshift shelter.
Rice, flour.
The head of one of these families was a tradesman with a general store in Mogadishu. He fled with his 7 children, leaving a home, car, and a thriving business to live like this.
We were among the wealthiest in Mogadishu. We were forced to abandon our wealth, property, and run for our lives. Today we have nothing.
And there's no sign of anything better for Abdi Hashi and the 21 people living under a tree in this town. No real hope that they'll return to their lives back in Mogadishu. Andrew Simmons, Dusumareb in Somalia.
Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and Saudi King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz are stressing the enhancement of Tehran-Riyadh ties as the way to secure the stability of the region. In a meeting on the sidelines of Hajj rituals in Mina, President Ahmadinejad said unity between Iran and Saudi Arabia will thwart the plots of enemies aimed at sowing discord among Muslim countries. He then called for boosting mutual cooperation within the framework of OPEC and the Persian Gulf Cooperation Council. King Abdullah, for his part, hailed participation of the Iranian president in the recent PGCC session and urged enhancement of ties among Muslim countries. Later in the day, President Ahmadinejad met with his Mauritanian counterpart, Sidi Old Sheikh Abdullahi. Russia's Atomstroy expert company says Bushehr power plant in southern Iran will be finalized by the end of 2008. President of the state-run company, Sergei Shematko, told reporters in China that the timing for the completion of Bushehr plant was agreed with Iran, but it did not include a specific date. Shematko added a clear date would be added later. Russia delivered the first shipment of nuclear fuel to Bushehr on December the 17th. Millions of Iranians all over the world Friday night will celebrate Yalda, the longest night of the year and the first night of winter, as a token of victory of the angel of goodness over the devil of badness. On this night, all members of the family stay together, narrate old stories, play traditional games, and eat dried fruits, candies, and nuts.
Yalda is thought to be the longest night of the year and is celebrated by all Iranians around the world. Regardless of their ideas, all Iranian people try to get together on that night and follow some ancient customs of Iranian people.
Fruits and nuts are eaten, especially pomegranates and watermelons. The red color in these fruits symbolizes the crimson hues of dawn and splendor of life.
We love it and we celebrate it.
What are you giving this holiday season? Is it this? Or this? Or maybe even this? This year, why not make a change? And give your friends and family the world. Now it's easy and meaningful to give the gift of Link TV. Just go to linktv.org or call 1-866-485-8848 to honor those you care about with a tax-deductible gift in their name to Link TV. Choose from one of 3 designs and have a personalized holiday card sent to everyone on your list, letting your loved ones know that you've made them official sponsors of Television Without Borders. This holiday season, remember, peace on earth is possible when we see the world without borders. Happy holidays from Link TV. And don't forget, send your card today.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic Video Podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.